Hello and welcome to this week's edition of TRP News. I'm your host, James Andre, and thank you for joining me. Online in the last few weeks, I've been debating with a few people about what's going on, public policy, things like TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and I've been hearing a lot of complaints from people about our government. Things like the politicians aren't listening to the public, they aren't serving the public, they are serving their own interests or corporate special interests, and that they are, I'm hearing things like they are corporate puppets. Many complain that nothing they say matters and their vote doesn't matter. And why vote? Why bother to vote? And nothing they can do to change it. The moneyed interests are the ones that control everything. So these are the kind of complaints I've been hearing online. And all this stuff really is in the wake of the 2014 election, November. And that election had the lowest voter turnout in 72 years. The lowest turnout since World War II. So most people are not even voting, okay? So in 43 states, less than half the eligible population bothered to vote, and no state broke 60%. So 43 states, less than half of the people who could vote voted, and in no state did 60% of the people vote. Not even 60%. Overall, the national turnout was only 36.3% this last November election. So the truth is, politicians are listening. Unfortunately, the only ones talking to them are the lobbyists. More than half the people, voters, aren't even voting. If only 36% of the voters vote, how many do you think call their representatives or even know who their representatives are? Apathy is one prong of the problem, and the other prong is ignorance. If you don't contact your representative, or if you don't know who your representative is, then how can you expect politicians or your representative to be responsive to your concerns about government policy? You have to be engaged. If you're not engaged, you're not voting, you don't know what's going on, then of course the people who are going to have more influence than you do. It's like going to negotiate a deal for a house or a car. If the person selling the house or car knows more about it than you do, and you're going to be at a disadvantage in the deal. You have to do your homework. You have to have information. If you are easily led by headlines and sound bites and rhetoric, political rhetoric, then and never bother with details or process, how much weight can you expect to be given to your position? And that's what I see happening a lot. People are complaining, but at the same time, they're making decisions and engaging in debates on a basis of rhetoric and things that aren't necessarily true or may be slanted in one way or another. We see this a lot on the right, and now it seems that it's been spreading all over, and it's becoming more and more common. And if you've watched this before, then you know my stance on TPP. A lot of people think, oh, you're a shill. You're someone who's a corporate shill. You're an Obama bot. You're someone who believes that slavery should continue and that corporations should rule over the worker. No, that's not true. What I am is a person who believes that progressives should be using the truth and facts to decide what policies are best for the country and what's best for our society. And a lot of the things that are going on, and it's in this case, I hate that term on both sides, but in this case, on both sides of the TPP debate, there's a lot of hyperbole and rhetoric and things that aren't necessarily accurate or true. Now, this happens in a lot of debates, a lot of things, a lot of issues, and people point to the headlines, the rhetoric, and then they make decisions on that. And I see a lot of people making decisions and taking positions based on how they feel about a person who's speaking or informing them about an issue, or how they feel about the words being used to describe the issue. And this is another thing people talk about all the time. Hillary Clinton is running for president, and people talk about, well, do I trust Hillary Clinton? Or do I trust this politician or that politician? Well, the issue, folks, is not trustworthiness. The issue is your level of engagement. The issue is the politician's responsiveness. The issue is, does the politician listen to the people they represent? That's what's important. If anyone can take advantage of you if you aren't paying attention. And not only that, even if you're not paying attention, they might not even be taking advantage of you. They just might be doing something against your interests without even a second thought about you. So it's not even necessarily taking advantage of you. It's just you didn't speak up, so your interests weren't represented. And that's what's happening a lot. So, this is the big thing, this two prongs, apathy and ignorance. And we can't just cry about each little individual thing that comes along, whoever's screaming the loudest that day. There's some major issues, some significant and root issues going on in our society and when it comes to our government that need to be addressed, and progressives should be focused on. And getting civic engagement up to a higher level is one important thing, and getting people's understanding and education about their government and government processes, policy making, legislation, the legislative process, those are really important issues. So instead of focusing on individual things, and a lot of these things that people scream about in the media on a day-to-day basis, they're here today, gone tomorrow. 1 week we're talking about this, and next week we're talking about that. Well, we have to really focus on the process, people. Focus on the process. Do people understand what is happening? Do people know how to work the levers of government? Do people know who their representatives are? Do they turn up to vote, and do they understand the issues? And until that is happening, until that is going on, then we've got a long way to go before screaming about one individual policy issue is going to matter at all. So, I'm not a corporate shill. I'm not someone who believes that corporations are people, but I am someone who believes that you're fighting a battle that you have not even armed yourself for yet. You are fighting against a system that you have to take control of before you can, you have to, if a car's out of control, you have to get behind the wheel before you can get it under control. And right now, most of us are not behind the wheel. So if people are not educated and don't turn up to vote, we will never reduce the influence of special interests. If we aren't civically engaged and we don't understand the process of government, we will always have short-term, short-sighted, and even counterproductive policy. So get engaged, folks. Get your neighbors and friends engaged. Help people understand, I've done a few segments on this, why vote. Help people understand the importance of voting. Help them understand that this is a serious issue and that we are all affected by it. And civic engagement, this is one thing that, really I can't stress enough. This is part of the problem that most people on the left, progressives, are really have to understand the root of this issue, okay? The corporate process, the capitalistic process that has taken over our government has also created a situation where there's an inflation, a translation of your labor, and that is the wealth and the fruits of your labor are more and more going to the top class, the 1%. And what happens is you work harder and harder and harder. You spend more and more of your hours trying to get ahead, and you have less and less time to be engaged in the operation of your society. Well, the number one priority for anyone in a society has to be the sustaining of that society. And what they've done is taken away your time, your energy, and co-opted it so that you have no choice. You don't have the time to educate yourself. You don't even have the energy to go out and vote, a lot of people, or to study up on the issues. You don't have the resources. And this is the number one tool they have to prevent you from taking control of your government. So this is a huge issue. I'll keep talking about this. I've talked about it before, why vote. But I just want to mention it this week because, as I said, I've been seeing this online. And people, it's not about the issue of the day. It's about the root problems we're dealing with that take away the focus and our distraction from the real issues that are taking down our society. Then those issues have to do with people co-opting your attention, co-opting your energy, co-opting your labor, and preventing you from directing it in productive, socially productive, and not even just largely socially productive, but think about it. Your family, devoting the energy to your families as well. And this is a terrible thing that's happening. The average person's dollar is not even worth as much as a rich person's dollar. If you're in the bottom 30%, your dollar's worth a lot less than the dollar of a 1%er. And this is something that we have to correct, and we're not going to do it if we're being distracted by the issue of the day or by rhetoric. And, I see this, it happens on the left and the right. This time, yes, it is both sides. They're fundraising off of this stuff. They scream about this issue or that issue, and then you get an email, help us donate, and there's millions and millions, and in this election, billions, literally billions of dollars, more money than some small countries have that are in this election. And not only are you working, 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, but now you're expected to support the system with whatever little money you can. So folks, pay attention, don't get distracted. Focus on the root issues here, which is civic participation, civic engagement, and taking control of our government and reversing this system where we all work, 90% of our efforts for the 1%. So an update on Hillary Clinton, the Clinton campaign last Sunday, which is yesterday as of this publication. In a phone call to fast food workers in Detroit, she said, "I want to fight with you every day." Clinton also voiced support for unions and collective bargaining while urging workers who built the Fight for 15 movement to keep their important work going. So the Fight for 15 is the movement that has been spreading around the country to get a $15 minimum wage for service workers, particularly fast food workers, to raise the wage. I think it's a great idea. I think that $15 is a great start. We not only need a $15, we need actually probably a $30 minimum wage as far as I'm concerned, and a 30-hour work week, but that's probably a long way coming. And I can, if you want to debate me on this or get more information about that, you can contact me through YouTube or through website or through email. But Fight for 15 is good. $15 minimum wage. Number one, this raising the minimum wage is an easy and effective way to redistribute some of this wealth, force the redistribution without having to rewrite the tax code. It's much easier to write a law regarding the minimum wage. So Hillary Clinton has come out in support of that. And also earlier in the week, Clinton endorsed automatic voter registration for all 18-year-olds. So she's saying that when you turn 18, you should automatically be registered to vote. Of course, a lot of Republicans didn't like to hear that. During a speech at Texas Southern University, she also called for a new national standard of no fewer than 20 days of early in-person voting in every state. So she wants 20 days minimum of early voting wherever you are, and including opportunities for weekend and evening voting. She also urged Congress to restore key sections of the Voting Rights Act. As you know, Supreme Court struck down several of those measures, including some aspects of the pre-clearance, which means that these states who in the past have had a history of discriminating against certain groups and creating rules and districts to prevent them from having an impact or even voting, had to first present their plan to a federal court, and that was struck down. Republicans, she said, are systematically and deliberately trying to stop millions of American citizens from voting. What part of democracy are they afraid of? So she's coming out strong for voting rights and expansion of voting capabilities for citizens across the country. And in fact, in Ohio, lawyers with ties to Clinton and the state Democratic Party in Ohio have filed a lawsuit alleging that GOP lawmakers in the state have intentionally sought to suppress Democratic voters' access to the polls. So she's actually putting her money where her mouth is. She's got her associated attorneys filing suits and aggressively going after voter suppression. And not only that, she's advocating for expansion of sorts of voting rights, voter registration, and voting opportunities at the polls. So Republicans gave the typical responses, accusations of increasing the possibility of voter fraud. Chris Christie saying, I guess she wants to have more voter fraud. Other Republicans saying, oh, she's trying to reduce the integrity of the ballot. And other Republicans saying, oh, you're using the voter suppression issue to divide Americans. And that's another favorite one. So, integrity of the ballot and division of Americans. And hey, GOP, you keep using those words, but I don't think they mean what you think they mean. So also this past Saturday, Senator Bernie Sanders came out in the media and at a rally and predicted a win in the New Hampshire Democratic primary over Hillary Clinton. Senator Sanders has been drawing a few crowds and gaining some media notice, and seems to be gaining a little bit of traction here and there. Sanders is said to have growing support, but a May poll shows him trailing Clinton in the state of New Hampshire with only 18 points to Hillary Clinton's 62. His message about wealth and income inequality seems to be gaining some traction. And on CNBC, Sanders gave an interview a few weeks ago indicating support for a 90% marginal tax rate. 90% marginal tax rate. So what that means is not that, for example, that's a tax on the 1% as it's as colloquially described. 90% marginal tax rate does not mean, for example, if I make $500,000, I pay 90% of that to the federal government. What it means is there is a margin. So, for example, it's somewhere around 480 or 450, I don't know what the number is, but for example, $450,000 of income, you pay a certain level of tax on that amount of income, and then the other $50,000 to make up $500,000 is taxed at 90%. So you pay 90% on the margin, not on your entire income. So basically, once you are wealthy, anything you make after that is taxed at a very high rate. That's the idea. So when asked if 90% was too high, he said no. And he said that what I think is obscene is when you have the top 1/10 of 1% owning almost as much as the bottom 90. And also he said, if you have seen a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to the top 10th of 1%, you've got to transfer it back, which I agree wholeheartedly with. There must be a transfer of wealth. I know on the right wing and probably some libertarians out there who are gnashing their teeth and cursing me as they watch this, that redistribution of wealth is a dirty word, a dirty phrase. But the bottom line is it's good for society, and also, it's been shown time and time again that once these people have that money, it does not go anywhere. It's just a suction. Talking about trade deals and the sucking sound of jobs going across the border. Well, when you have this poor tax system and this low marginal tax rate, you have a sucking sound of the wealthy, the 1%, sucking up all the extra cash in the economy. And that means less cash for infrastructure, less cash for social programs, and not only that, less cash for opportunities for those trying to improve their own personal economic condition. So the top marginal tax rate, which is paid by the wealthiest Americans, actually was 92% in the 1950s. 92%. So we've had years of a high marginal tax rate. As high as 92%. And in fact, economists say that you can have an even higher, up to 95% marginal tax rate without disrupting the economy, without damaging or hurting the wealthy and their economic activity. Today, we've had up to 92%, and today the top marginal tax rate is 39.6%. 39.6% compared to a high in the past historically of 92. Although, and 39.6%, everybody knows there are a ton of loopholes. So the 1% are not even at many times paying that. And of course, we all know about the corporate tax rates and the fact that many large wealthy corporations don't pay any tax at all. Now, I've been questioned about this, and someone has said to me, well, I don't even believe that corporations should pay taxes. Well, I don't automatically have any problem with that. I do have a problem with corporations being considered people. I do have a problem with corporations owning property in perpetuity. But at the same time, if you can come up with a tax system that taxes people and that people who are actually collecting this money, then I don't think corporations necessarily need to be taxed. But you also have to have a system that prevents corporations from hoarding cash. So just to answer that question that someone gave me this past week. So American growth actually has been higher with much higher top marginal tax rates and lower when tax rates were substantially lower. So we've actually had better economic growth with a higher marginal tax rate than we have, and this is historically, these are the numbers, than we have with a low marginal tax rate. Higher marginal tax rate, more growth. Lower marginal tax rate, less growth. Of course, now, here's one of those things, a lot of this has happened, for example, around World War II. So who knows? The numbers aren't going to be identical. But at the same time, we do know that once that cash is freed into the economy, it's available for everyone, and it's a stimulus in the economy in general. So right now we have a system where cash goes to the 1% and stays there. So if we can redistribute and free up that cash, we know economically and historically that it is a stimulus to the economy and it is a benefit to everyone. So the high marginal rate could truly be a case of a rising tide lifting all boats, including economic analysis shows the 1%. So even though there's a higher marginal tax rate, we all benefit, rich, middle class, and poor. So higher tax rates are a tough sell, and Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders, has a long way to go before winning the Democratic primary and even the New Hampshire primary, but we will keep you posted on what is happening in the Democratic primary race. And I suppose, begrudgingly, we'll talk a little bit about the Republicans too. But here, we like to focus on progressives, and right now, there is no third party, so that means we also focus largely on the Democratic Party. Also this week, today, as of this publication, the G7 summit is happening in Germany. This week marks the 41st G7 summit, which begins today, Monday, June 7th, and goes till tomorrow, Tuesday, June 8th. So the group of seven, G7, is a group consisting of finance ministers and central bank governors of 7 major advanced economies, as reported, now their economies as analyzed and reported by the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom and the United States, meeting to discuss primarily economic issues. So the European Union is also represented within the G7. They have representatives there. And the G7 countries represent more than 64% of the net global wealth. 64% of the wealth is represented in this one economic summit. The G7 Summit 2015 in Schloss-Elmau will focus on the global economy as well as on key issues regarding foreign, security, and development policy. Additionally, the UN conferences, they'll talk about the UN conferences to be held in 2015 as well as their post-2015 agenda. So Obama is at the summit, and he's expected to call for extending and increasing sanctions on Russia in the wake of the Russian military action in the Ukraine. The Iraqis are also at the G7 summit, and the Iraqi prime minister is there and expected to ask for more equipment and aid in the fight against ISIS. So we've been sending them aid in the form of equipment and training, and this is an ongoing process, and right now they're expected to be at the G7 summit asking for more equipment and more aid. There's no word right now on whether that's going to be happening, but I imagine it will happen. But they don't want to do it during the summit, and the word is from the State Department and I guess some military, the cabinet, is that they are constantly evaluating these contributions and support of equipment and training, and so I imagine that sooner or later, under constant evaluation, that means that at some point you're going to say yes. So thousands are also there protesting the G7 summit in southern Germany. Protesters chanted slogans against police violence, held signs denouncing a proposed transatlantic trade deal, and waved rainbow flags and signs with anti-war slogans. Police had 22,000 officers from around Germany on hand. One protester said they wanted to show their anger at the G7, calling them henchmen of bankers and corporations. So as I said, the summit ends tomorrow. There's thousands of protesters there. This is a regular occurrence at these summits. A lot of people there protesting the economic situation, the capitalist nature of a lot of our economies, and the globalization of our societies and economies. So that is what's going on. Obama's there, and this will be 2 days, and the big story out of there right now is economic sanctions against Russia, and they will be talking about a lot of other issues. Okay, and finally this week, an update on the global migrant situation, particularly in the Mediterranean. Over the weekend, nearly 6,000 migrants were rescued by an array of European military vessels. And at the same time, mayors of Sicilian and other southern towns in Italy have warned for months that they've run out of room for migrants. These migrants are fleeing poverty, persecution, and war in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, as far away as Asia. There's a recent election in Italy, and politicians in the northern parts of Italy are actually made vows and promises and other charged remarks on Twitter and things like that this past Sunday that they were not going to shelter any more migrants saved at sea. The number of migrants to have arrived in Italy by boat this year has now passed 50,000. So 50,000 migrants have now reached Italy alone from mostly, I guess, northern Africa. And last week, as I reported to you about this camp in Paris that the Paris government said that had to be shut down. Well, that migrant camp was closed down last week, and police evicted the migrants and cleared away the tents. The Paris police chief said in a statement that the camp had been evacuated because of tensions among migrants and particularly alarming conditions, including health risks like scabies and dysentery. So we know these are legal camps. They're not good conditions which these people are living under. Not only that, they're not even legal immigrants. They are trying to relocate them. There are humanitarian efforts underway to find them places to live and to support them and make sure that they don't get sick or get displaced even further. A lot of these migrants are trying to make it to the UK or other countries, and mostly they do not want to stop in Paris or France. They're trying to get somewhere else, but have difficulty either being stowing away or hiding or trying to get across other borders. A lot of them get caught and sent back and keep trying multiple times. And one of the things that they have to keep moving forward to or attempting to move on is that in France, the asylum policy is one of the strictest in Europe. And in fact, while a lot of these countries, I said there's international programs and a lot of countries, the European Union, trying to help Italy place all these migrants that are coming in, especially this time around the summer months, that they are actually increasing the amount of asylums granted, whereas in France, the number of asylums actually went down 5% during this crisis. So once again, I just wanted to give you an update on this migrant crisis. We have a lot of conflicts going on around the world. You have ISIS in 12 countries. You have destabilized governments all over the world, and you have people fleeing and trying to preserve their lives all over the world. And as I've told you before, the UN estimates something like 52 million people currently displaced, either in their countries or outside of their countries. Basically what that means is there are 52 million people in the world right now with no homes and nowhere to go. And that number, I don't know if it does include these camps, but there are migrant camps all over the world. You have refugees in the Middle East, you have refugees in Africa, you have refugees in Asia, and you have, they are everywhere. And there's these camps everywhere, hundreds of thousands of people living in desperate conditions. And I say desperate, they have support, they have humanitarian aid, but just imagine if you're dependent on a truck pulling up from an international organization to give you a bag of food and a bottle of water. This is not, a long-term solution. It shouldn't be a long-term solution, but for millions of people, it has turned into one. So this is expected to go on, and the numbers are expected to increase. And meanwhile, a lot of these people in localities where these migrants are landing are saying, we just don't have enough room for these people anymore. So clearly, as the summer goes on, we're going to see a lot more of this. And I mentioned a little bit about the migration in Southeast Asia as it relates to Malaysia, and especially stories in the news about Malaysia and their human rights abuses and how it affects the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But there is a lot of work to be done on these issues. And again, I just want to reiterate what I said at the top of the broadcast. We have to focus on the root issues. We can't be focused on the sort of loudest issue of the day. So these are a lot of destabilized areas, and I know it's tricky. I know there's no easy solutions, and people, it's easy to say no boots on the ground, but where are these people going to go, and do we allow people to keep destabilizing areas, chasing people out, and leaving people with nowhere to go? The other side, the flip side of that is, we still have people exclaiming that we need to send arms to Syrians. We still have people exclaiming that we need to send arms to Ukraine. So a lot of these arms are not, these people are not manufacturing guns and weapons. They're getting them from us and the Russians. So we are actually supplying the resources needed to create conflict in a lot of these countries. So that is that's what I'm talking about, an example of a root cause of the issue. Where are they getting the guns and the weapons? You know, a lot of these guns and weapons, these, for example, rifles, use standard ammunition. There's basically 2 rounds that can go in 90% of these guns. I think it's 5.52 and 7.62 or something like that. You know, these are what they've been called international or UN rounds, or and until we stop doing this sort of thing, until we stop allowing people to profit off of this, and until we use and stop using third world or lesser economically developed countries as resources for us to unload our unneeded or extra weaponry, then we are going to have these kind of problems. So let's focus on the root cause, folks. Progressives, let's not get distracted. Let's not buy tickets to the sideshow. Let's focus on what's really important. We have to be educated. We have to be engaged. And we can't chase one issue this week and one issue next week. We know it's important. Civic engagement, demanding responsiveness from our government, changes in policies about our capitalist system and the role of corporations in our government. We have to be educated. We have to make education a priority. We have to make human rights a priority. And we have to make we are the world's police, we are the largest military, but we have to create some rules of responsibility around that. And until these things happen, TPP doesn't matter, all these other minor issues don't really matter, because next week there's going to be another one. You want to complain about NSA surveillance? I mean, it's nothing. TPP is nothing. Bulk surveillance is nothing. There's much bigger issues, progressives, for you to focus on, and I hope that's what you do. So that's it for this week. Thanks for watching this broadcast. Like I said, there's information below in the comments if you want to contact me, and if you have criticisms, agreement, or you just want to call me more names, believe me, I'm used to it. Also, if you can get more information on our website, therationalprogressive.com, and if you only want to hear the audio version of this publication, you can catch that on archive.org, USARPP. And those links are also available at the bottom of the video, below the video, and as well as links to the individual segments in this video. I'm your host, James Andre, and thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you again next week.